Single tray of wilted lettuce landed in seat 1A, a slap to Keanu Reeves' dignity as laughter echoed around him. The crew fawned over suits, blind to the star in their midst. But Keanu saw everything. The bias, the dismissal, the system at work. His fingers tapped a device, logging every slight, setting a quiet storm in motion. This wasn't about a meal, it was about who gets seen. And Keanu was about to make them all look. The Los Angeles International Airport hummed with the quiet rhythm of late-night departures, its glass walls reflecting the glow of overhead lights. Keanu Reeves stepped through the gate to board Horizon Air Flight 821, his black wool coat trailing slightly behind him. He carried a simple canvas bag slung over one shoulder, its worn edges a stark contrast to the polished luxury of the first-class jet bridge. No entourage, no cameras, just a man, moving through a world that often mistook his humility for invisibility. Keanu, the Hollywood star known for The Matrix and John Wick, lived a life of quiet principles, his fame a mere backdrop to his deeper purpose. Tonight, he was headed to Tokyo for a private summit on global digital equity, a cause close to his heart, rooted in his belief that access to opportunity should know no boundaries. Keanu's boots made soft thuds on the carpeted walkway as he approached the aircraft door. His long, silver-streaked hair was tied back loosely, and his dark eyes scanned the surroundings with calm awareness. Tucked inside his coat pocket was a handwritten letter, its edges creased from years of careful handling. It was from an old friend, a mentor, who had once told him, "You don't need to be loud to be seen, Keanu. You just need to be true." The words had stayed with him, a reminder of why he fought for fairness, especially in spaces where it was quietly denied. The first-class cabin of Horizon Air 821 gleamed with curated elegance, plush leather seats, warm amber lighting, and the faint scent of expensive wine lingering in the air. Keanu found his seat, 1A, a window spot perfect for solitude. He stowed his bag in the overhead bin and settled in, his movements deliberate, almost invisible. The cabin was a stage for the privileged, where wealth and status dictated attention, but Keanu, despite his Diamond Elite status and decades of loyalty to the airline, blended into the shadows. He didn't demand recognition. He never had. At the cabin door, flight attendant Sarah Johnson greeted passengers with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome aboard," she said. Her voice clipped as she glanced at Keanu before turning her attention to a man in a tailored suit stepping in behind him. "Mr. John Smith, it's a pleasure to have you with us again," she said, her tone warming instantly, as if reserved for someone who mattered. Keanu said nothing, his face unreadable. He was used to this. The way his quiet presence made people overlook him, especially when they didn't know his name. His mother, of English and Chinese descent, had taught him early on that the world often judged first by appearances. Tonight, in seat 10A, that lesson felt all too familiar. He fastened his seatbelt and pulled the letter from his pocket, unfolding it gently. The blue ink told a story of a young boy, mocked for his mixed heritage, who grew up to prove his worth not through noise, but through action. Keanu traced the words with his finger, a quiet resolve settling in his chest. This flight wasn't just about reaching Tokyo. It was about carrying that resolve into a world that often forgot to see everyone equally. The cabin filled with the low hum of conversation as other passengers settled in. John Smith, a tech mogul, laughed loudly in seat 10C. Michael Brown, a real estate investor, adjusted his cufflinks in 1D. David Wilson, a lawyer, scrolled through his phone in 2A. Sarah moved among them, her smile brightening as she offered champagne flutes and warm greetings. "Mr. Brown, your usual red wine?" she asked, her voice like velvet. "Mr. Wilson, we've saved the best seat for you." Their names rolled off her tongue effortlessly, a script of privilege. But for Keanu there was no name, no nod, no warmth. Just a fleeting glance, as if he were a placeholder in a seat meant for someone else. Keanu leaned back, his eyes drifting to the window where the tarmac lights flickered. He didn't expect special treatment. His years in Hollywood had taught him fame was a fleeting currency, but the absence of basic respect stung, not because of who he was, but because of what it revealed. The cabin's golden glow masked a hierarchy, one where some were seen and others were erased. In seat 2B, a young woman named Lynn, a Vietnamese-American student, sat quietly with a book, her presence equally ignored. Keanu noticed her, the way her shoulders tensed when Sarah passed without a word. He saw himself in her. The outsider, the one who didn't fit the mold of VIP. The plane's engines roared to life, preparing for takeoff. Keanu folded the letter and tucked it back into his coat. This wasn't just another flight. It was a mirror, reflecting a system that decided who mattered based on unspoken rules. And Keanu, sitting silently in seat 1A, was about to turn that mirror back on itself. His hand rested on the armrest, fingers tapping softly, a rhythm not of nerves, but of purpose. The summit in Tokyo awaited. But tonight, the real work began here, in the quiet of a cabin that had already made its first mistake. The Horizon Air 821 cabin settled into a gentle hum as the plane climbed into the night sky, the amber lights casting soft shadows across the leather seats. Keanu Reeves sat in seat 1A, his gaze fixed on the window, where the city lights of Los Angeles faded into a distant glow. The handwritten letter from his old friend rested in his coat pocket, its words a quiet anchor. Truth doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs someone to hold it steady. But in the polished luxury of first class, truth felt like a guest who hadn't been invited. Keanu's calm exterior hid a growing awareness of the invisible lines drawn around him, lines that separated those who were seen from those who were not. Sarah Johnson moved through the aisle with the grace of a seasoned performer, her heels clicking rhythmically against the carpet. Her smile, bright and calculated, was reserved for a select few. "Mr. John Smith, would you like the Chateau Margaux with your meal?" she asked, leaning slightly toward the tech mogul in seat 10C, her voice warm with familiarity. John laughed, raising his glass. "You know me too well, Sarah." Across the aisle, Michael Brown in 1D received a similar nod, his name spoken like a badge of honor. "Mr. Brown, we've got your favorite steak ready." The air filled with the scent of seared meat and warm bread, a promise of indulgence delivered with care. Keanu waited, his hands resting lightly on his thighs. He had pre-ordered a vegan meal a week ago, confirmed twice through Horizon Air's app and a follow-up email. The request was simple, a reflection of his quiet commitment to a plant-based lifestyle, rooted in compassion for the planet and its creatures. But when Sarah approached seat 1A, her smile faltered, replaced by a tight-lipped professionalism. "Hi there," she said, her tone clipped, as if addressing a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong room. "Did you select a meal online?" "I did," Keanu replied, his voice low and steady. "Vegan option, confirmed 7 days ago." He met her gaze, not with anger, but with a clarity that seemed to unsettle her. Sarah blinked, her smile stiffening. "Oh, I see. The system must not have updated. Let me check." She turned away without another word, her heels clicking faster as she retreated to the galley. Keanu's eyes followed her, not in frustration, but in recognition. This wasn't a glitch, it was a choice. The moment echoed a memory from years ago, when Keanu, barely 20, had walked into a casting room only to be mistaken for an assistant because of his mixed heritage. His mother's Chinese roots often made people assume he didn't belong. The sting of being overlooked had never left him, not because it hurt his pride, but because it revealed a truth about the world. Some faces were deemed worthy, others dismissed without a second thought. He glanced across the cabin to seat 2B, where Lynn, the young Vietnamese-American student, sat with her book closed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had pressed the call button earlier, asking about her meal, only to be met with Sarah's curt, "We'll get to it later." Lynn's shoulders slumped, her eyes fixed on the seat back, and Keanu saw in her the same quiet hurt he'd known too well. Sarah returned, her tray carrying a single item, a cold chicken sandwich wrapped in plastic, its lettuce wilted, its bread soggy from condensation. A half-filled cup of lukewarm water sat beside it, no silverware, no napkin, just a stark offering that felt more like an afterthought than a meal. "I'm sorry, we're out of the vegan option," Sarah said, her voice flat, devoid of apology. "This is what we have left." She placed the tray on Keanu's table and walked away, already turning her attention to David Wilson in 2A. "Mr. Wilson, your dessert is coming right up," she called, her tone brightening like a switch had been flipped. Keanu stared at the sandwich, untouched, its presence a silent insult. This wasn't about hunger. It was about value. Who was deemed worthy of care and who was not? The aroma of truffle butter and warm rolls drifted from the seats behind him, where John Smith and Michael Brown clinked glasses, their laughter light and carefree. Keanu's mind flashed to Lynn, who had received a similar tray, her face betraying a flicker of resignation. She was a student, likely saving for months to afford this seat, hoping for a moment of dignity on her journey to Tokyo. Instead, she was met with the same dismissal, her quiet presence erased by a system that prioritized flash over substance. The cabin's golden glow felt hollow now, a veneer masking a deeper iniquity. Keanu's fingers brushed the letter in his pocket, its words grounding him. He thought of his mother, who had faced her own battles as a woman of Chinese descent in a world quick to judge. He thought of Lin, whose name Sarah hadn't bothered to learn, whose story echoed his own. This wasn't just a flight. It was a microcosm of a world where privilege was a currency, and some were left bankrupt, without ever knowing why. Lane threw out his eye, her expression a mix of defiance and vulnerability. She mouthed a single word: "Why?" Keanu nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement. He understood. The sandwich wasn't the issue. It was the message it carried. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. But Keanu had spent a lifetime proving that belonging wasn't granted by others. It was claimed through action. His hand moved to the small device in his lap, its screen glowing faintly. He wasn't angry. He was resolute. The system had made a mistake, not by forgetting his meal, but by assuming he would stay silent. And in that assumption, they had underestimated the wrong man. The cabin of Horizon, Air 821, hummed with the steady drone of engines, the amber lights casting a deceptive warmth over the first-class seats. Keanu Reeves sat in 1A, the untouched chicken sandwich a silent monument to the dismissal he'd just endured. The tray, with its wilted lettuce and lukewarm water, wasn't just a meal. It was a statement, a cold reminder that in this space, some were deemed invisible. But Keanu's calm exterior masked a fire, not of anger, but of purpose. His fingers rested on the armrest, tapping a slow, deliberate rhythm, each beat a countdown to action. The letter in his coat pocket, with its faded ink and words of truth, anchored him. This wasn't about one forgotten meal. It was about a system that thrived on selective blindness. And Keanu was done letting it slide. He reached into his bag and pulled out a sleek device no larger than a credit card, its matte black surface blending seamlessly with his dark coat. It was a prototype from Equal Eye, a project he'd co-founded with a small team of activists and technologists to combat subtle bias in service industries. The device, disguised as an e-reader, was a powerful tool, capable of recording interactions, analyzing tone, tracking eye contact, and mapping behavioral patterns in real time. Keanu activated it with a single tap, the screen flickering to life with a soft blue glow. A behavioral heat map began to form, red clusters pulsing around seats 1C, 1D, and 2A, where Sarah Johnson's attention lingered longest. Seat 1A, his seat, remained a pale void, untouched by her warmth or acknowledgement. Keanu's eyes flicked to seat 2B, where Lynn, the young Vietnamese-American student, sat with her own tray of cold food, her book now closed, her hands clasped tightly. She had pressed the call button again, only to be met with Sarah's dismissive wave, "I'll get to you soon." Lynn's face betrayed a quiet hurt, but also a spark of defiance. Keanu recognized that spark. It was the same one he'd felt years ago when a producer had assumed he was a delivery driver because of his mixed heritage. The memory stung, but it also fueled him. He opened a secure channel on the device and sent a single command: "Begin behavioral log. Subject, Sarah Johnson, ID 4729, timestamp, flight 821. Across the world, in a dimly lit office in New York, Emily Carter's laptop pinged with an encrypted alert. Emily, a brilliant data engineer and Keanu's trusted collaborator, knew what that signal meant. Her dark curls were pulled into a tight bun, her glasses reflecting rows of code. As she opened the Equal Eye dashboard, the data streamed in: Sarah's clipped tone, her 14-second interaction with Keanu compared to 62 seconds with John Smith, her averted gaze, her selective name-dropping. Emily's jaw tightened. She'd faced her own battles in tech, overlooked for promotions because she was a woman, her ideas dismissed until a male colleague echoed them. This wasn't just Keanu's fight, it was hers too. Back in the cabin, something shifted. Lynn, emboldened by the injustice she'd witnessed, pulled out her phone and discreetly recorded Sarah as she poured wine for Michael Brown, her laugh bright and performative. Lynn hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen, then sent the video to Keanu via the in-flight messaging system. A small note accompanied it: "I saw what she did to you. It's not right." Keanu read the message, and for the first time that night, a faint smile crossed his face. Lynn's courage, though quiet, was a reminder that he wasn't alone. He typed back, "Thank you, Lynn. Your voice matters." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of shared understanding. Lynn's video synced with the Equal Eye device, adding a visual layer to the data. The footage showed Sarah's warm smile for John Smith, her careful posture as she served David Wilson, and the stark contrast of her cold efficiency at seat 1A. Keanu tapped another command: overlay video evidence. Cross-reference her with behavioral map. The system began to build a case, not with accusations, but with undeniable patterns. Sarah's bias wasn't loud or overt. It was in the tilt of her head, the brevity of her words, the way she reserved her warmth for those she deemed worthy. Keanu saw it, Lynn saw it, and now the data saw it too. He leaned back, the letter in his pocket a quiet reminder of his mentor's words. Truth is a weapon, but only if you wield it with precision. Keanu wasn't here to make a scene. He'd learned long ago that shouting rarely changed systems. Systems changed when you exposed their flaws with clarity. His mind drifted to his mother, who had navigated a world that often judged her for her Chinese heritage. She'd taught him to stand firm, not with rage, but with resolve. Lynn, in her quiet act of rebellion, embodied that same resolve. Keanu felt a connection not just to her, but to everyone who'd ever been made to feel less than. This flight was more than a journey to Tokyo, it was a battlefield, and Keanu was armed with something sharper than anger: evidence. Sarah passed by again, her eyes skimming over seat 1A without stopping. She didn't see the device in Keanu's lap, didn't know that every step she took was being logged, every word analyzed. She didn't know that Lynn's video had just become a key piece in a puzzle that would unravel her carefully curated performance. Keanu's fingers tapped once more, sending a final command to Emily: escalate to review, priority, immediate. In New York, Emily's screen flashed red, the data compiling into a dossier that would soon land on the desk of Horizon Air's CEO. The cabin lights dimmed, but for Keanu, the truth was burning brighter than ever. He wasn't fighting for himself, he was fighting for Lynn, for his mother, for every person who'd ever been handed a cold sandwich instead of respect. And the fight had only just begun. The first-class cabin of Horizon Air 821 was a study in contrasts, its amber glow and plush leather seats cloaking a deeper tension that pulsed beneath the surface. Keanu Reeves sat in seat 1, a cold chicken sandwich still untouched on his tray, a symbol of the dismissal he and others had endured. The hum of the plane's engines was steady, but inside Keanu, a quiet storm was building. Not of rage, but of resolve. His Equal Eye device glowed faintly in his lap, its data stream weaving a tapestry of evidence that exposed the subtle biases woven into the cabin's polished routine. The letter in his pocket, with its weathered words of truth, reminded him why he was here, not just to reach Tokyo, but to challenge a system that thrived on selective sight. Across the aisle, Sarah Johnson continued her performance, her smile bright as she leaned toward John Smith in seat 10. "Another glass of Chateau Margaux, Mr. Smith?" she asked, her voice dripping with warmth. The tech mogul chuckled, raising his glass, oblivious to the disparity unfolding just feet away. Michael Brown in 1D and David Wilson in 2A received similar attention, their names spoken like invitations to an exclusive club. But for Keanu and for Lynn in 2B, there was no such welcome. Just a cold sandwich and a colder indifference. Keanu's eyes met Lynn's briefly, her expression a mix of resolve and quiet pain. She had sent him the video, a small but courageous act, and in that moment they were allies in a shared fight. In New York, Emily Carter's office was a hive of activity, her screen alight with the data pouring in from Keanu's device. The equal-eye dashboard painted a damning picture. Red clusters of engagement around seats 1C, 1D, and 2A, where Sarah's tone was warm, her interactions lengthy. Seat 1A and 2B, however, were ghost zones, marked by minimal contact and clipped responses. Emily dug deeper, pulling up Sarah's service history. 3 prior complaints surfaced. An Indian-American doctor ignored on a flight to London, a black professor served last despite early boarding, and a Korean entrepreneur denied her pre-ordered meal with the same system error excuse Sarah had used tonight. Each time, the complaints were dismissed as insufficient evidence. Emily's jaw clenched. This wasn't a glitch, it was a pattern, and Sarah had hidden behind it for too long. Back in the cabin, Sarah approached Keanu again, her posture stiff, her smile a thin veneer. "Everything okay here?" she asked, her tone suggesting she'd already moved on. Keanu looked up, his dark eyes steady, piercing through her facade. "I ordered a vegan meal," he said, his voice calm but weighted with intent. "I confirmed it twice." "You didn't even ask my name." Sarah's smile faltered, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Well, sir, sometimes the system misses things," she replied, her words rehearsed, dismissive. "Some passengers expect too much." The phrase landed like a slap, coated in condescension, a smile that dared him to react. Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but sharp. "Or maybe some passengers just expect to be seen." The words hung in the air, a quiet challenge that seemed to catch Sarah off guard. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her fingers twitching at her side. For a moment, the cabin's hum seemed louder, the silence between them heavier than the engine's roar. Sarah turned away, her heels clicking faster as she retreated, unaware that her words had just been flagged by Equal Eye. Disrespectful language. Bias confidence, 96.4%. Keanu tapped his device, logging the exchange, his fingers steady as he sent the update to Emily. Trigger phrase recorded. Escalate to full review. Lynn, watching from 2B, caught Keanu's eye again. She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been here before," she said, her words trembling with vulnerability. "Last year I was passed over for an internship because my name sounded too foreign. They didn't even read my resume." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with a fire that mirrored Keanu's own. He nodded, his expression softening. "I know that feeling," he said. "When I was starting out, a director told me I'd never be a leading man because I didn't look the part. My mother's Chinese heritage made me an outsider in their eyes." Lynn's breath caught, her hand tightening around her book. "But you proved them wrong," she said. Keanu smiled faintly. "And so will you." Their conversation was brief, but it forged a bond, a shared understanding of what it meant to be erased. Lynn's courage in sending the video, her willingness to speak, reminded Keanu of his own younger self, pushing against a world that tried to define him by its narrow standards. He tapped another command on his device. Incorporate passenger testimony. Seat 2B, cross-reference bias pattern. The data was no longer just about Sarah. It was about a system that let her behavior go unchecked. A system that hurt people like Lynn, like his mother, like countless others who'd been made to feel less than. In New York, Emily finalized the dossier, attaching Lynn's video, the behavioral heat map, and Sarah's history of complaints. She titled it Horizon Air 821, Systemic Discrimination Incident. With a single keystroke, she sent it to Horizon Air's CEO, James Thompson, and the ethics board, flagging it as a priority red audit. The data was irrefutable. Sarah's favoritism toward white, wealthy passengers wasn't an accident. It was a habit, one the airline had ignored for years. Emily added a personal note. This is what prejudice looks like when it hides behind a smile and a uniform. She leaned back, her tea cold, her resolve burning. Sarah had no idea her routine was now a case study. Back on the plane, Sarah laughed lightly with David Wilson, oblivious to the storm gathering around her. Keanu sat still, his gaze fixed on the window, the clouds outside a blur of possibility. The sandwich remained untouched, but the truth was moving faster than the plane itself. He wasn't fighting for an apology or a better meal. He was fighting for Lynn, for the doctor, the professor, the entrepreneur, for everyone who'd ever been handed a cold sandwich instead of dignity, and with every tap on his device, that fight was growing louder, even in its silence. The cabin of Horizon Air 821 began its descent toward Tokyo's Narita International Airport, the amber lights dimming as the plane sliced through the early morning clouds. Keanu Reeves sat in seat 1A, his untouched sandwich tray still resting on the table, a quiet testament to the dismissal he and Lynn had faced. The equal-eye device in his lap was now silent, its work done, the data it had captured already rippling across the world to Emily Carter's desk in New York. The letter in Keanu's pocket, with its faded words of truth, felt heavier now, not with burden, but with purpose. This flight, meant to be a simple journey to a summit on digital equity, had become something more, a reckoning for a system that had grown too comfortable with its biases. Sarah Johnson moved through the aisle one last time, collecting trays and offering polished smiles to John Smith, Michael Brown, and David Wilson. Her voice was syrupy as she leaned toward Smith in 1C. "Safe travels, Mr. Smith. We hope to see you again soon." She didn't glance at seat 1A, didn't check on Keanu or Lynn in 2B. To her, they were footnotes in a routine flight, easily forgotten. But Keanu's calm gaze followed her, not with anger, but with the weight of inevitability. The data he'd sent to Emily wasn't just a record, it was a mirror, forcing the system to confront its own reflection. In New York, Emily Carter's screen pulsed with the final confirmation. Horizon Air 821 dossier received. Priority red audit initiated. The report, complete with Lynn's video, behavioral heat maps, and Sarah's history of complaints, had reached CEO James Thompson and the ethics board. Emily leaned back, her finger still on the keyboard, her heart heavy with the stories buried in the data. Stories of passengers like Lynn, like the Indian-American doctor, the black professor, all dismissed with the same tired excuses. She thought of her own struggles, overlooked in meeting rooms where her ideas were ignored until a man repeated them. This wasn't just Keanu's fight, it was theirs, and she felt the weight of their shared resolve. As the plane touched down with a soft jolt, the cabin stirred with the rustle of passengers preparing to disembark. Keanu folded his tray table, the sandwich untouched, and slipped the equal-eye device into his bag. Lynn caught his eye from 2B, her expression a mix of gratitude and quiet strength. Before standing, Keanu leaned toward her, his voice low. "You didn't let them make you invisible," he said. "That's power, Lynn. Hold on to it." Lynn's eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a newfound resolve. She pulled out the book she'd been reading, a worn copy of a tech manual, and tucked a small note inside, the one Keanu had sent her. "Your voice matters." "I will," she whispered, clutching the book like a talisman. The cabin doors opened, and Keanu stood, his black coat settling around him like a quiet shield. As he stepped into the jet bridge, 3 figures in dark suits waited at the gate, their expressions grim. One held a tablet displaying the Horizon Air logo, another clutched a folder stamped Ethics Review. The third, a compliance officer, stepped forward. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice formal but tinged with urgency, "we'd like to apologize on behalf of Horizon Air." Keanu didn't break stride, his boots silent on the carpet. "It's not about me," he said over his shoulder, his tone calm but firm. "It's about what you let happen." Behind him, Sarah Johnson emerged from the galley, her smile faltering as the compliance officer approached her. "Ms. Johnson, please proceed to Terminal Compliance Room 3 for a mandatory inquiry." Sarah's hand froze on her clipboard, her face paling as the words sank in. She glanced back at the cabin, her eyes darting to seat 1A, as if realizing too late who had sat there. The other crew members, including a young attendant named Mark, avoided her gaze, their silence heavy with unease. Keanu reached the terminal's exit, where Lynn caught up with him. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady now. "I'm going to keep fighting, for my place, for my name." Keanu nodded, handing her a small card with the Equal Eye logo. "You already are," he said, "and you're not alone." Lynn smiled, tucking the card into her pocket, her steps lighter as she walked toward her future in Tokyo. Days later, Horizon Air announced a sweeping cultural audit and a new training program on equity, inspired by the incident on Flight 821. A small plaque was installed on seat Sunday A across their fleet, engraved with a simple message, "Where everyone is seen." Sarah was suspended, her career under review, but the change went deeper. The airline began listening to the stories of passengers who'd been overlooked, their voices finally heard. Keanu's quiet act had cracked open a door, letting light into a system that had thrived in the dark. The Narita International Airport buzzed with the quiet efficiency of early morning arrivals, its glass corridors reflecting the first light of dawn. Keanu Reeves stepped into the terminal, his black coat draped over his arm, the canvas bag slung over his shoulder. He moved with the same unassuming grace that had carried him through the flight, his presence a silent force that left no trace except in the lives he'd touched. The Equal Eye device, now tucked away, had done its work, exposing a system's flaws with precision. The letter in his pocket, its words of truth from a long-ago mentor, felt lighter now, as if it had guided him through the storm and back to solid ground. Keanu didn't seek headlines or applause. He sought change, and change was already in motion. Behind him, the ripples of Flight 821 spread outward. Lynn, the young student from seat 2B, walked toward her gate with a new resolve, the Equal Eye card in her pocket a reminder that her voice mattered. She would return to her studies in Tokyo, determined to carve her place in a world that had tried to erase her. The plaque on seat 1A, where everyone is seen, became a quiet symbol, noticed by passengers who began to share their own stories of being overlooked. On social media, the hashtag Seat1A emerged, a digital campfire where people posted tales of dismissal, a black nurse ignored in a luxury lounge, a Latino teacher served last, a woman passed over because her name didn't fit. Each story was a spark, igniting a movement that grew beyond the flight. Keanu boarded a car waiting outside, his eyes tracing Tokyo's skyline as it unfolded in the morning light. He didn't need to speak to the press or claim victory. The truth had spoken for him, amplified by data, by Lynn's courage, by Emily's resolve. The message was clear: you don't need fame to shift the world. You need only the courage to refuse invisibility, to hold a system accountable with quiet, unrelenting truth. This story of Keanu Reeves in Seat 10A resonates deeply with me because it exposes a truth we've all felt at some point, the sting of being unseen. I believe quiet strength, like Keanu's, can dismantle systems that thrive on exclusion, but I also wonder if silence risks letting subtle injustices fester. What do you think? Does change require a loud stand, or can it start with a single, deliberate act? I'd love to hear your perspective, whether you agree or see it differently. Share your own Seat 1A story in the comments or on social media. Let's spark a conversation about dignity and respect. Thank you for reading and engaging with this story. It means the world to me. If it moved you, hit like, share it, and follow for more stories that challenge us to see and be seen. Together, we can make every seat count.